Hello, hello. This is our first video that we're going to do that's for the new year, and it's going to be talking about the last year. So that means we're doing a 2025 stats and wrap up of the year. So I'm going to go over how many books I read, star ratings, genres, all that fun stuff. And we'll see how long it takes and how it goes. So the first thing is that I read 94 books in 2025. My goal was 100. I was really doubting that I would have hit that goal. Sorry about this if it makes a weird noise. I noticed it was away. But no, my goal was 100. At the end of the year, the last month, I was almost 20 books away from my goal. So to have it where I finished actually only being 6 away is pretty good to me. And stuff. And considering this was my first legit reading goal, 2024, I kind of was starting, so I didn't know about how much I was reading on average. And even though I had some good months in 2025 where I was reading really good books, there was a couple of months where I only read 3 or 4 books and stuff. And as a parent and a mom who has 3 kids to take care of and doctor's appointments and other stuff that I was dealing with, it was still pretty good. It just shows that there's months where I gotta let myself have a little bit more breathing room and grace to kind of have that. So 94 books, not bad. My new goal I will talk about in a separate video probably, so keep an eye on that if you want to know. But my top genres, actually, let's go back. So 94 books. According to Goodreads, I read 33,400 pages out of those 94 books. It did tell me, what was it? I think on average, my books that I read were 355 pages on average. My lowest, I think it was 68, 48, 68, something like that. The highest was the Queen of Shadows one, which was 640, 650 something. So again, that's not too bad. There was more, I think the year before I had a lot more bigger books. So I'm okay with that. Now we'll go to top genres. According to Fable, who I use Goodreads and Fable, so these are stats from both kind of. According to Fable, my top genres were romance, fantasy, and young adult. I believe the year prior it was romance, fantasy, thrillers, or fiction, something like that. So young adult is a slightly newer one. I did read a lot more kind of fantasy books that were in the young adult genre category, I guess you would say. So I do see how that one came. And romance and fantasy have always been ones that I just love. So it's no shocker that those are still in the picture. My average rating for the stars for books, according to Fable, it's 3.8. And according to Goodreads, it's 3.7. Now, the difference, of course, with that, if you don't know, is that Goodreads only allows you to do whole stars. So, and Fable allows you to do 0.25, 0.5, 0.7, 0.5. So, according to this, Goodreads I gave lower a little bit, and Fable I gave higher. But I think that's because, again, sometimes if I had a book on Goodreads that I put as 3 stars, it was really 3.2 or 3.5. So, and I'm not one who's I'm going to make it a 4-star if it was really this sometimes. So, there is that. My 5-star books, I actually only had 4 5-star books, which is surprising because I think the year before I had so many. And again, I don't know for this part if it's because I got a little bit more stricter in my thing, because there were a lot of books that I'm I want to give a 5-star, but I also don't. There was one that was a 5-star that I later on put it down because I was no. So there is that. But the 4 or 5-star picks that I have is Throne of Secrets, which was last year's book that I first read. Love that one. Love that there was dragons and like magic, and there was like some misunderstanding that had to do with magic and stuff. Love that. The second one was Spell Shop. This one was a cute, cozy fantasy. Loved the reference to reading and like how you felt. It felt very like it was speaking to me, and I loved Kaz. I think I mentioned this in another video and stuff, where again, I don't remember a lot of the characters' names, but the fact that I remember Kaz, the spider plant, is a sign that I love that book. And it was one of the few books that I almost was so tempted to annotate, and I never have annotated books. I do have like little tabs to do it, but I never did it. And that was the first book that I was tempted to actually try to do it. So that's a big thing. Third one was A Court of Mist and Fury. That was the second ACOTAR book. That one I absolutely loved. It was so interesting, so like confusing and heartbreaking, and like there's just so much that like it was so perfect. There's no words for that one. I love that one. Her other books, most of them are still kind of 4 stars minus Assassin's Blade. Hated that one. We'll say that. And then the last one was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This was a new release one. At first, I was super confused about why everyone was rating it so high. And then I kept going and I loved it. I loved the gargoyle, Bartholomew, I think is how you say his name. I suck at that name. I would call it Bart just for the heck of it. But I loved it. And then the ending was just crazy. And I can't wait for the new one. I think it's coming out this year. I'm not sure. But if it is, I'm going to read that one out of that. Next, we'll go with my favorite series. So there is a series that stands out. And mind you that the books weren't 5 stars, but the series as a whole is one that like I just loved it so much. It was so good. So like good. There's certain books where again I didn't like it as much. But then there's other ones where I was like, I'm so excited. I can't wait. So that is the Truly Devious series. Again, I've read all of the ones up to that, to where we are, which is the 9 Liars was the last one. And then here soon is the Velvet Knife. That one's coming out in a couple months. I can't wait for that one because I want to know what's going on, what's going to happen based on the ending of 9 Liars. But love that series. They're so quick to read. And there's so many things that I love about it. So that one I'll have to say is my favorite. And that is a young adult book that I newly got into. So there's that. Next, we're going to talk about are my most read authors. So this one is interesting because Fable keeps track of authors that you've read a lot. So according to this year, my most read author was Serena Valentino. And that is because I read 10 of her books, which was the Disney Villain series, which again, I have a whole video talking about me reading all of that series. There's only one that I didn't read. Well, no. So there's 2 that I didn't read. One is because I read it back in 2024. And then the other one was the newest release, which I got, but then I was slightly burnt out from reading 10 of her books, all back to back to back to back to back. Well, minus a couple, I think I did put a couple of reads in between, but I had to. I was getting burnt out. But I read her a total of 10 times this year. So there's that. Next was Maureen Johnson, who is the Truly Devious series. Like I said, I read the 5 of the Truly Devious series books, and then I read one of her newer releases that wasn't quite as good as the Truly Devious. It was still alright, but it just didn't hit the mark like the Truly Devious series. So she came in at a total of 6 books. Next is, of course, Sarah J. Maas. I am currently, like I said, still trying to read the ACOTAR series. Like I said, I read A Court of Mist and Fury a year later, basically, after I read the first one, Court of Rose and Thorns. The whole little acronyms that she has for her books for that series, I suck at so bad. So do bear with me. But I read A Court of Thorns and Roses in July of 2024, and then I finally read A Court of Mist and Fury, I think August of 2025, so roughly a year apart. So don't know when I'll get to the next one in that one. Don't know. And I am currently trying to read the rest of Throne of Glass. I think I have 3 books left. And I will be having a video posted about that whole experience, minus the fact that I did read 2 of the books on their own a while ago, but they're still included just briefly. So there's that. So she has 5 books. Most of them are Throne of Glass. Most of them. An honorable mention for that, because I just did the top 3, because I didn't really have a lot after that, because Fable will count it after 2. And there's a lot of people where I read 2 of their books, but I didn't get very far after that and more, either because they didn't write more or because I just didn't pick up more. So the only other person who had more than just 2 times books that I read was Allie Hazelwood, which I read 4 of her books. So she was pretty close. She was 1 away from being tied with Sarah J. Maas books, but I read a good chunk of hers. So one book, or there's a couple of books that ended up kind of being my lower ratings. So I'm not counting the ones that I didn't rate, because a lot of the nonfiction and then like the Britney Spears biography memoir thing, I don't rate those, because again, those are self-help books or they're about someone's actual personal life. And so again, I don't like to rate those. But there's a couple of books that are not those that got rated pretty low. So those ones are The Watchmaker of Filigree Street. That one had it where it was one of the few books where I was so confused, not sure 100% what's going on and why it was so confusing. And then that one put me in a reading slump because I forced myself to finish it. And after that, I struggled to read anything else. I think I read 1 other book. I think that book was in a month where I only read 3. 1 before that one, and then 1 after. That finally helped me a little bit get out of that slump. But it was so difficult. So that one is one that I struggled with. A couple of the Disney villain books were ones that I did not rate very high. But again, that could have been also because, again, I was feeling burnt out with that series. And, reading 10 of those back to back to back, even though for the most part they're pretty short and easy to read, they were so hard to get into after a while when you're just expecting something else. So those are the few that I had that were low ranking. Most of the others are kind of 3 stars and up, or something around there like that. Again, Goodreads would show me all the books I read and their star ratings. Fable would only show me either the most popular or like I think the last 10-15 books that I read. So I couldn't 100% check that out and see which ones according to Fable. But I do know there's 2 Disney villain books and then The Watchmaker of Filigree that were not my favorite, and I remembered that. So we're going to go with that for my least favorite ones. My most favorite book of the whole year is going to be what is it called? The Night and the Moth. I am going to butcher this apparently, but that one was my favorite of the time, all around. ultimate favorite. Again, Truly Devious, probably close with it. And then a third favorite is actually going to be Immortal Consequences. I think on YouTube and I think on Instagram and stuff, I talked about that book because that one made me cry. There was some stuff that made it where it wasn't going to be a 5-star, but it was close. Again, a little bit more picky on giving my star ratings, but I still love that book. And so it is still one that I really like and really can't wait to see what is coming next. So there's that. And then we're going to wrap it up with the fact that out of the 365 days, or is it 66? 65. This is where my brain's going to be like short-circuiting. But out of the whole year, I read a total of 324 days, according to Fable. My longest streak on there was 83 days. So I'm pretty proud of that. I apparently hit the top 5% with the reading amount, however that works, you know. I also hit in the top 5% for the romance genre, being like one of the top romance genre readers, which is pretty cool. I like that. But like I said, I think it's going to be an interesting year for this upcoming year. Like I said, I think I'm going to do another video that talks about my specific goals for this upcoming year. And so that way we can like touch back on this video with that one. So I will let you guys know my reading goals for 2026 in another video. But tell me, how was your year? How many books did you read? Top genres? Favorite authors? Favorite book? Least favorite book? Tell me all of that down below. And also, thank you for watching. And if you like and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.